We're just 9 days away from the start of the Philadelphia 76ers 2024 season, and some issues with Joel Embiid are popping up already. We have some recent reports about the game plan with his left knee injury, the management plan that is being put in place in the best effort to preserve him for the entirety of the season, and it's some things that are going to not have Sixers fans quite so happy. So I'm going to break down exactly what we know from a Tim Bontemps report, as well as Shams Charania, shining a little bit of light on the process and what is the new norm for Joel Embiid, who we know has battled these injury issues throughout the entirety of his career. So let's jump right into it and start with the quote that had everyone frustrated from Joel himself, saying, quote, "If I had to guess, I'd probably never play back-to-backs the rest of my career." Now, this is something that I think we have to face head on and address wholeheartedly here, that Joel Embiid has some degenerative knee issues that are not getting better anytime soon. This is not a situation in which you allow him to rest up, heal, and ultimately is back to 100%. This could be something that the game plan is more about management, preserving, and just finding the best route to have him getting through it in a way. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality, and I do think that we have to face it here. Now, there's a couple other things that I do want to dive into with this kind of slew of information that was thrown our way, but I also wanted to pull up this direct question that was asked from Nick Nurse. This, of course, become before all this news came out, this video was released, and he was asked about Joel potentially being a part of the preseason. So, courtesy of Keith Pompey here, we do have this clip.
I noticed, is Joel going to make this trip?
He's not here. He's at a scheduled assessment of his knee.
Okay.
That was always on the schedule, and we're still waiting for what's next.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. You good?
So I didn't love that response from Nick Nurse at the time, and it is nice that we have a little bit more clarity due to this information that has just come out here, and to kind of get to this management plan that he is speaking on here. A couple of things that I did want to pull up, and we have here coming from Shams Charania on NBA Today, and he says, quote, "What we're seeing with Joel Embiid, it's part of the new normal that we're going to see with Joel Embiid. I'm told it's going to include periodic time off for him during the course of the season. It's going to include regularly scheduled checkups for Joel Embiid throughout the season." So this is not something that is a one-time thing or is just happening over the course of the preseason. We got to be buckled up for the long haul with Joel. Now, to add to this and continue, we got some more updates here that I did think were worth bringing up. And to add to that, we have that, quote, "Embiid will also begrudgingly continue to wear a brace on the left knee that he injured in January, but while he has always been uncomfortable wearing either a face mask or a brace at any point in his career, he said it won't stop him from doing the things that have made him one of the league's most dominant forces." This is the unfortunate reality for what we have with Joel Embiid. There's never a doubt about what a high-caliber talent he is. We know what he can do when he is on the floor. It's how often he's on the floor that is the question here. And last year, a perfect microcosm of what this Joel Embiid situation. We know the statistical dominance that he produces. 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, 5.6 assists, shot a ridiculous 52.9% from the field. And to be honest, the play that I think encapsulates Joel Embiid probably more than anything was that dunk against the Knicks, where he pulls off an off the backboard alley-oop, slams it down, a play that may be one of over OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson there, a play that maybe one of 10 players in the NBA can pull off, and then down he goes. And that was basically it for Joel. To his credit, he did gut it out, play through it, and I do think he deserves a little bit more respect from that. I have seen some of the conversations for Clippers fans here kind of fighting at Paul George, saying how you left one kind of degenerative knee issue with Kawhi Leonard to join one with Joel Embiid. Well, my pushback to that, yes, we've seen Kawhi carry a team throughout the playoffs, but we've also seen him not play a lot of basketball. And that does seem to be the exact situation that he's walking into this year. For Joel Embiid, say what you want about him, but the guy is out there as often as he possibly can. We've seen him gimp through and limp around through playoff series and still looking like the best player on the floor in a lot of those situations, which I think goes a little bit under talked about here. That for all the critiques that come to Joel, at least he's on the floor, at least he's competing and still providing some real deal high-level minutes for his team. That the bar is set so high that, yes, it's a drop-off by his standards, but it's not a drop-off from the NBA standards, and he's a guy who's still a very high-impact guy. So just kind of a note there. Now, a couple other pieces of this that I do think are relevant. As I mentioned, the season is right around the corner, and it doesn't feel like it's a lock that Joel Embiid is going to be available. So we have this from Gina Menzel of the Philadelphia Inquirer here, and she said, "Ask Nick Nurse if there is any concern about Joel Embiid being available for opening night. He reiterated that this is a part of a season-long management plan. Quote, opening night's still a long way away, but we are right on course with the plan that we kind of set out." So kind of a word in favor of it, but not as like committal as I would like that answer to be. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like this is great that we're having these conversations before day one. Frankly, it is a concern of mine that we have not seen this man, or that Joel Embiid has not participated in any live game action, any sort of 5-on-5 in practice to this point. But the reality is that the long view is the proper one here, that we've seen this pathway where the game plan has basically been hope Joel Embiid doesn't get hurt. That will roll him out there as often as possible. He suits up for as many games as he possibly can, and then just pray that when we get to the finish line for the playoffs, that he can hang in there. That has not worked, and it has not worked year in and year out for Joel Embiid. So I do appreciate that there is this long-term plan in place, but it still has to be committed to, and that means being okay with on the tough back-to-backs. I've jokingly and kind of come to believe this plan that I think there's some credence to only playing him in home games this year. Slap a nice 42 games next to him, of course, taking it off the back-to-backs, which, by the way, these Sixers have 15 back-to-backs this year, so not an insufficient number there, something that this will come into play often. But I do think, more so than ever, it is just about the playoffs. There's no doubt about the caliber of talent Joel Embiid is. Now, are there other factors that do play a role in this? His fitness level is something that has been critiqued in the past, and that will not be aided while he's not playing basketball. The chemistry of learning to play with a guy like Paul George, of course, taking those next steps with Tyrese Maxey, the new additions that are brought on, guys like Caleb Martin and the other names that will be a key part of this Sixers team. Those are all factors that you have to find a way to make sure it still works, even if he is not going to be on the floor here. But ultimately, health is the biggest thing, and it does seem like the Sixers do have that in view this year. Now, to survive this, it's going to take some step up from the team, step up from the players around him. For year in and year out, we've seen this massive drop-off for when Joel Embiid is on the floor and when he's not. And that happens both in the flow of the game during the non-Embiid minutes, in which we see games just fall apart all so often, and also throughout the course of the season in those games where you need, obviously, a backup center to step in and start. Well, enter Andre Drummond, who has been the best backup center that we've seen during the Joel Embiid era, coming off a season with the Chicago Bulls in which he averaged 8.4 points per game, 9 rebounds, a guy who is the self-proclaimed best rebounder of all time, and frankly has a little bit of a case to that you can dive into the numbers and make your argument for Andre there. Well, Andre Drummond's going to be a key part of the Sixers team and very clearly a central part of this plan here. That Drummond is probably going to lead the league in starts for any backup center for a guy because of these opportunities that are provided for him. Now, Drummond was asked a little bit about the concept of why he wanted to come to Philadelphia. Clearly a guy that is thrilled to be back. I love the excitement that he's showing. And he shared with Tim Bontemps how the opening hours of free agency went and how a phone call with Joel Embiid helped him decide to rejoin the Sixers this summer. He said, quote, "Getting a phone call from the best center in the NBA saying, 'I need you here,' it's hard to tell him no. I spoke to a lot of teams this summer, and he was probably the third or fourth person to call me. I wasn't expecting to hear from him. He just gave me an idea of what he was thinking for and needed, what he was looking for, and he needed me to come back and really help him out to win something bigger than him. He's already been an MVP. He's got a scoring title. He's done everything, and now he's going to try and win a championship." So what this says to me is I do think this is something that has been game planned for a while, either from Joel specifically, Joel's camp, or from the Sixers as a whole, but you need a competent backup for this to remotely be possible. So I think Andre Drummond we're going to see quite often this year. I think Joel Embiid, we're probably not. That it's going to be very limited, probably the least games that he's played. He played 39 last year. It would not shock me if we're talking about that kind of number. The fact that, and to pull up this Shams Charania quote again, that he's really talking about extensive period of time. And we do have, here we go with this, that he's saying what we're seeing with Joel Embiid, it's a part of the new normal that we're going to see with Joel Embiid. I'm told that it's going to include periodic time off for him during the course of the season. It's going to include regularly scheduled checkups for Joel Embiid throughout the season. And the sentence that I want to particularly highlight here is that periodic time off for him during the course of the season. That is something that feels a bit extensive to me. So maybe it is a little bit time to panic for how often we're going to see Joel, but I do think that we do need to take a step back and reflect and take the proper long view that this is about winning a championship, and Joel is more committed to that than ever. And a couple other highlights that I did want to note here that we got in the article, that the 30-year-old Embiid is doing his part, arriving at training camp having lost 25 to 30 pounds with the goal to lose more. pointing to how Hall of Fame big man Tim Duncan transformed his body as his career progressed as inspiration. Embiid hopes a slimmer version of himself can better handle the rigors of the NBA season. Quote, "It's just the evolution of your body and getting older and finding ways to stay afloat and be as dominant as I've always been." The Tim Duncan model is something that I think is a great one for him to follow. Duncan's obviously a guy who had a long and prosperous career, has plenty of rings on his finger as well. So I do like that Joel's taking a page out of that book, and to just call a spade here, like, it would benefit him to put a little bit less weight on his body and particularly on those knees here. When you look at the version of Joel at Kansas and the version of Joel now, drastically different just body composition. That he is a huge human being. There's no way around that, but it's clear that he's added quite a bit of weight throughout his NBA career, as what happens to all of us, no critiquing here. But I do think that it would be benefit that he gets into the slimmest spot that he possibly can. Maybe we see a little improved agility, but most importantly, it's just less of a load on his body from a day-to-day basis, a game-by-game basis, and hopefully that knee can hold up for the length of the season. So I'm not going to sit up here and sugarcoat it and say this is great news that Joel Embiid is battling these things going into the season, but what I will say is I like that the team's being a little bit more upfront about it. I like that there's a little more transparency. I still think they could improve in that factor, as there's still some guarded information, as is often the case with Joel's injury status. But it is nice that there's a plan in place, and I hope they stick to it. That more often than not, my biggest complaint about the Joel side of things is the uncertainty. It doesn't feel like there's this concrete structure for when he will play, when he won't. It feels like we're finally approaching that. So ultimately, we got to trust the process here. We got to believe what these Sixers have in mind is going to be what's successful. Is it going to be frustrating that this team will probably not win as many regular season games as we're accustomed to or expecting based on all the new additions? Yes. Is it frustrating that we're not going to see Joel Embiid on a night-by-night basis or as often you would like? Absolutely. But is it the best thing for the team? It absolutely is. So we will see how this fully plays out. I'm sure we'll kind of get a feel for the overall game plan and structure as the season goes on. But the reality is that everything is pointing towards contending for a championship, and that means Joel Embiid has to do his part to make sure he's the best version of himself when the moments get the largest. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you panicking? Are you sounding the alarm a little bit more than I am? I kind of have bounced back and forth with this one. I feel better now that there is kind of this news dump than I did when just kind of seeing those Nick Nurse answers. But ultimately, I think we got to be in it for the long haul with Joel Embiid and with this Sixers team. So I hope you guys are ready to ride with me for the season. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button. We got plenty of big plans for this season. Cannot wait to take Sixers Digest to another level and want as many people along for the ride as possible. So smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Drop a like on this video, your comments below, and I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.